Okay, everyone. Sorry for the bit of a slow start today, but this is computer graphics, and today what we're going to do is student presentations. So these are the team presentations. First up, we're going to have graphical insanity. Then we're going to have the haunting guild. Then we're going to have the myconids, or excuse me, myconids, mission control, nature's end, and then the we and Ed 3090 Ti group, the easily named group that just rolls off your tongue there. Okay, so graphical insanity, if you guys will take it away.
Awesome. Hello, awesome. Okay, do I have share screen privileges? I do. Okay.
You should.
All right, now I'm sharing my screen. Okay, cool, cool. Let me, how do I do this slide thing real quick? Is it, I'm sorry,
You
I'm not
sound
used
like
to this.
me, Paul. You sound like me, always searching for how to do things.
Let's see. Oh, well, we'll just do it like this. Anyways, okay. So, graphical sanity update, introduction. So the game, to remind you guys, our game we wanted to do is basically like an underwater simulator. We're trying to just have this, try and control a like a machine-like thing that will go around like a coral reef, looking like with fishes and possible like ships and stuff in the like ocean, like deep depths of the water. And then group updates. So Zach had to leave. He had to drop classes. He had to drop this class because of family problems. So that leaves just three of us. Uh, I was in charge of getting like fish assets and stuff. If everyone else wanted to say what they did, let's see.
I can go ahead and
Okay.
say what I've been working on. I did the preliminary landscaping map work, and I'll be doing a demo of my progress so far in one of the later slides.
Oh, and David.
And I was working. My name's David, and I was working with Blender, getting used to it, and I made a model for the drone, which will be in the next slide. It's bare bones now. We have a more recent uh, model, which actually will include like an engine with the rotors and tail fins, which I don't know if Alex can pull it up now.
I can't pull up the whole thing right now, but I'll we'll do that
We'll
later.
show it
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
We'll show it later.
All right. So next up is map updates.
All right. So what I've been working on for the map is I found a host of free assets online. The only ones I've actually been able to find have been surface level assets, trees, rocks, stuff like that. So I've been trying to manipulate those assets to make them look more aquatic for our map, and you'll be able to see that when I go to the demo. If you want to change over to the demo. No, 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 the
Yeah, I got it. I got it. Okay. So we don't have anything with the play button right now, but we can like show you guys what it kind of looks like.
Now, the only thing I have worked on is that corner right there. So if you want to pan around so you can see the rocks at the front.
Yeah.
This was me testing different like rock colorations and stuff to see if I could get an underwater feel here. And the post-processing zone is just so that I could see what it would look like with the blue hue underwater.
Due to them issues, there's my fish right there. So I got my fishies in there. I was able to get some color on them. They have like a little movement going on. For the next update, I'm going to actually have them move around and react to the player potentially. And Evan, I believe, or no, David. Yeah, did this.
And that is the updated model, which
Oh.
needs to be updated more, I think.
But
But
okay, sorry.
no, it's fine. What I'll be working on is adding some animations for when a player would like want to go down or up. You'll have the tail fins moving appropriately, and whenever they go forward, obviously the rotors need to spin, and that'll be what I've been working on next.
So,
All right, and then this slide is one other thing I wanted to talk about for the map. I found this really cool like underwater scene. It's for an older version of Unreal, so it's a little bit funky, but I'm gonna try and see what assets we can pull out of it. Alex actually pulled the model of the fish out of there, and he's gonna be able to turn those into little AI fish with a little coding magic, but should be really cool if we can pull those elements out and actually have some proper underwater features. Any questions, comments from anyone? All right.
I can't see the chat if there's anything in the chat. So.
Oh, let's see. Nope, nothing.
Okay.
I actually have one question. This is Stephanie Nemec. How do you plan on animating your, let's see, on slide 3, what's it called?
The ROV, the drone.
The drone. Do you plan on animating it in Blender or in another software or anything like that?
I'm unaware of how to. All I was thinking was needed was to add joints or whatever onto the movable parts. And then I guess it would be in Unreal, but
Maybe
I
with
will
the
have
bone
I need
structure
more
stuff.
research for that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not too sure myself.
I just want to also mention, from what I've been researching, and again, I mentioned like in the last for Sprint 2 that we found like a Blender to Unreal, so you might be able to animate in Blender and move it over to Unreal. If I find anything, I'll be sure to update everyone about it also. But other than that, thank you for answering my question.
Thank you for.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Any suggestions or anything also we're more than open to, for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks guys. Next up we have the Haunting Guild. Who's going to be doing that one?
That's me.
Okay, see if you can share your screen.
All right, is that good?
We can see it, Blake, yeah.
Perfect. All right, this is the Haunting Guild, update 3. Just brief overview again. What we're doing is sort of an open world, day-night cycle, varied areas and weather effects, and it's sort of a survival game. You know, you try to survive by getting tools during the day to help you at nighttime. Sort of the idea. So currently, I've been working on implementing weather effects and the day-night cycle onto the actual map and populating the environment, working on texturing, and looking into some other options for source control. Matthew's been working on environment building and topography, and Jerome has been helping with landscaping and some of the NPC character work. This is one thing I spent some time since last week working on, is finding a good algorithm for procedurally generating plants, trees, rocks, things like that, just to spare me from having to place these things by hand. So this is sort of where I'm thinking we may end up going for our source control option. We've been using GitHub. It didn't take long to see that that's probably not a great tool for this. Mainly the file size problem. Once you started adding assets, it just didn't make sense to really keep using it. So this is free to use as long as your team is, I think, like 5 or fewer members. So I think this is what I'm going to try out. This is the, I guess you would call it, algorithm that we implemented for the day-night cycle. You'll see some of that in the demo. Again, some weather effects were added to the mountains near the starting area, and you'll kind of see that in the demo as well. What I'm also working on are some procedurally generated rainstorms that will kind of wet the environment. So hopefully I'll have that done pretty soon. This was sort of a big thing. Trying to figure out a way to reduce the tiling appearance of textures on the map. I found this algorithm that's it's called a macro texture variation. It just uses some different textures and kind of splices them in randomly with the main texture you want to use to give you a more cohesive look. I'll let Matthew go from here.
All right, so I've been working on trying to get like the grass and stuff, as well as you can see like that. Currently the grass should be basically everywhere. It's just not rendered in some of the time. If you go to the next slide. I also edited the topography a little bit more and stuff, making it more of a playable area to run around in, because before it wasn't really finished. And I also made it so that way I found a few areas that if a player accidentally dropped down, could actually accidentally drop down and stuff, and then they kind of got stuck. I made sure that to make sure that there wasn't any places that could happen, at least that I could find, and that there would always be a way for a player to get out of those places. And that's it for me, at least.
Hey, Blake, could you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been doing research on getting assets put into the game, imported into the game. I want to first work on getting the daytime assets in, primarily focus on the animals, try to get some animals in there and some basic animation. And for the daytime animals, it would be, well, what I'm thinking is for the daytime animals, it would be more just importing assets. And for the nighttime animals or creatures, since they have a more customary look, I may need to model those. So I have been playing around with Blender and getting used to Blender. That's what I've been doing. Does anyone have any questions?
Let's see, and I'll go ahead and start the demo video here. And you should see kind of in this the day-night cycle. I've got it sped up just so I can pay attention to it. There are little bits of snow coming in here from the background, and that'll increase as you go toward the mountains. There. And it's kind of nice. Once it gets totally dark, you can kind of see the stars pop out a little bit. Okay. There's the sort of test field for the procedurally generated bushes I worked on the other day. Let's see here. So this is kind of a large area, so I may spare you guys from having to watch it, but that's sort of the gist of where we're at right now. So.
Okay, cool. Are there any questions? I see one in chat from Eric. Is the snow just a particle system above the map?
Yes, it's a combination of particle systems.
Are there any other questions for the Haunting Guild? Okay, thank you guys. Next up we have the Mike and Ids. Who's taking over the screen for that? Okay, Jason.
I am.
Take it away. Oh, who is?
Sorry.
Stephanie.
Can you guys see the screen all right?
One sec, it's coming up.
No.
It says it started, but okay, there it is.
Okay. All right. Vivian, would you like to kick us off?
Sure thing. This was our sprint 3, and this team is me, Vivian Carr, Alan King, Jonah Landry, and Stephanie Namek. We can go ahead. So we didn't get everything that we started the plans on this one. We haven't looked into that world regeneration, but we have been making progress with development of our flora that's going to populate the world and the actual development of models. We can go to the next one.
Mhm.
And so what we're going to end up doing in our next section is, once again, we're going to continue looking at that terrain materials we started, but it hasn't actually gotten applied into it. We have worked on getting some of our interactions with the AI going and started analyzing that into these the gameplay mechanics that we would say.
So to go on and discuss our modeling work, this is Stephanie Namek. As you can see here, this is a brief concept art that we drew up. I believe Jonah made this. Some things that I worked with specifically while making these models was messing around with UV unwrapping, because I noticed when I went from Blender to Unreal, whenever I had to rebuild the lighting, it kept giving me errors with lighting. So I had to research how to do UV unwrapping and seeing how that affects everything. See, there's a comment. Yeah, UV unwrapping is definitely a pain because there's seams. But anyways, to continue back onto this, another thing I had to figure out was seeing how I can texture paint and how that would affect importing the asset from Blender to Unreal. And on to the next slide, you can see the result of, based off this image, I have created some grass that we can use as well as a fungal tree of sorts. Here's a close-up of those grass models. Again, and this is it being imported from Blender to Unreal. And then this is what, after experimenting with the textures, how actually painting it in Blender and then importing it would affect it. So good news is if you do that and then import it into Unreal, it'll remember that. Another thing I've been working on is a rabbit model. So far, so good. I still need to finish making the legs and then making sure it's symmetrical, even, things like that. And then after that, I'm planning to rig it and see how it'll animate, how that will fare. I'll keep you all updated on that. If I can figure out how to get it animated, I'll be sure to share it with you all. Speaking of rabbits, Alan, if you would like to take over and discuss your part.
All right, so I've been working on the interaction with the rabbit and trying to get it to roam around the area, as well as run away from the character when you get too close. And by doing that, all I did was set a collision sphere around the creature, and when you get too close, it will trigger a runaway. And I can show a demo.
Do you want to hold it off for the end, Alan, real quick, so we can
Yeah,
just
sure.
finish up the presentation?
Yeah, sure. And I will say that this isn't perfected, but it is a good start to what we have, and I just need to make it better in the future.
All right, so I'm taking over now. It's Jonah, and what I've been working on this week is just figuring out what direction we're going to be going with our concepts, starting with what we want to get done first, you remember from before, we talked about having 3 different areas: the savanna, the watering hole, and the cave. What we're focusing on right now, because it's going to be the majority of the map, is the savanna. And we've already gotten a lot of progress done with the rabbit, with the model, and working on the AI for it. So what we need to get down now are the wolf and the final design for the critter. The wolf hasn't really changed that much, but the critters kind of moved forward a little bit. Got more of an idea for what we want to go for, because the idea of it is it's something that's going to be hunting the wolves, so it needs to be both threatening and kind of, since it's more of like an intelligent direction that we're going for, it needs to be kind of sleek, is what we're thinking. But what really happened a lot this week were ideas with the flora, more so than the fauna, with the trees and the grass, for example, having those pinkish tops. While we might be changing the trees, the idea with them is that since they're away from the watering hole, the whole idea is that the environment's chemotrophic. So instead of being based on sunlight, it's based on these chemicals that spew from the watering hole. So they have these pink tops that are like net that catch those up, and that's kind of the whole design with the plants. Then going on to the watering hole itself, we still have the same idea for the animals, the hippo and the hornbill, which is the idea of just this big herbivore that you can't really mess with, and then something that kind of lives with it. And then with the idea of the plants being more lush there, but in a different kind of way. Instead of reaching up, they're going to be right next to the water hole, so they're going to be reaching into it. So there's going to be plants going, well, fungal versions of plants going into the water, as well as larger versions of the plants that will be found around the savanna, like the trees and the grass. Go on to the next. Yep. And handing it back to Vivian.
All right, and then we also have stuff planned out for this upcoming Sprint 4, which is going to be integrating these behaviors into the models, getting our concepts on the predator, which will go after both the rabbit-like creature and you, and then also getting gameplay, combat, item collection, just all of that going, and then seeing what we will be able to do about getting the map better integrated.
Are there any questions for our group? Let me pull up.
Should we go back to Alan? For the...
Oh, yes, that's right. Let me stop sharing my screen so Alan can do that. Go ahead, Alan.
All right, let's see. All right. Can everyone see this or no?
We can see it, Alan.
Good.
All right, so if I start playing, you can see in the left that the creature is just roaming, and it'll try to get, but then when you get close to it, it'll start running away from you, and it's still a work in progress, but it will just constantly keep running from you, and then after that, it will just start roaming. And I see it when it tries to get close to me, it stops, noticing that I'm in the way, and then starts trying to roam again. And that's essentially it. And I just have the text on the left to show that it's roaming around. But yeah. I don't know if there's any questions about that. All right.
Okay, gang, thank you very much. Let's see, up next we have mission control. He needs mission
right.
control. Do you have screen?
I think I already have screen share.
Okay, Eric, we can see your screen. Thank you.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna kick us off.
Oh,
So,
right.
okay.
Gone.
So we're mission control. This is our progress update for today. Our summary of progress is that we've added smoke particles to the flame particles and made enhancements to the older particle systems. Like for instance, the fire particle system now uses a new material and the sparks now look a lot more realistic than they did in the last version. We've added terrain over the cave. Last time the cave was not integrated into the world very well, and you can obviously see how it was made. And we've covered that, and we've now made it blend in with the exterior world, the cave entrance especially. Now blends better with the rest of the landscape. We've changed the material of the cave floor. We've added noise to the height of the cave floor, so it's not always universally flat. We've added point lights with random intensity to give it a more light effect to some items. We've improved the material of the escape pod to give it a more metallic and reflective appearance. We've begun adding flora to the cave where we have point lights set up. There's currently a lot of mushrooms. We've added emissive materials to cave flora to help convey bioluminescence. And I just wanted to show for one of the things I did, how I updated some of the particle effect systems on the
This
flame.
Xbox has clearly gotten messed up whenever I downloaded this. My bad.
Oh, no problem. The flame particle system now has a new material, and last time it was more just like the default circle particle systems, but Unity has a not Unity, I'm sorry, Unreal Engine has a flame particle system, that not a particle system, but a material that you can use to make it look a lot more realistic. And for the sparks, I've edited them to where they look more like sparks and not just kind of like glitter being thrown at you. And for the added particle system effect, I wanted to make something in addition to the fire. That way it kind of like has an effect, and I've added a smoke particle system to where it now smoke just constantly comes from the flames. Makes it look a little bit more cool than it did before. I'm going to be handing it over to Eric now.
So we started adding clusters of plants around the areas in the caves where we had point lights set up. So as you can see, there is a metric on mushrooms because I tried looking up what kind of plants grow in caves, and it's basically just fungus. So there's that. It's kind of hard to tell in the screenshots, but I edited the materials of these to add an emission to all of these with a Fresnel effect, so that it kind of like adds an emission effect to the rim of the like material. And so these are like the 4 different kinds of plant life that we currently have in there. I'm actually going to have to replace these green ones at some point because I realized that I got way too trigger happy with subdivision surface in Blender, and there are way too many vertices on these for how big they are. This cluster of mushrooms as a combined mesh should not be 106 megabytes. It just shouldn't. And then I'm gonna hand it over to Cody, who was doing things with the terrain. And who might still be muted.
All right, I had done myself. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. So this is the cave floor that I actually went and added noise to. I added noise all throughout the cave floor, but this is just a picture to show you. I hope you can see it pretty well in the picture, but the different like colored gray areas on the ground, we went ahead and just threw like we painted noise across the ground of the cave, so that way it wasn't just a flat terrain. It looks a lot better, and it just kind of looks more natural. And we're gonna go ahead and paint some more like rocks and foliage and different stuff like that across the cave as well in upcoming updates. And speaking of upcoming updates, this is our planned work until the next section, the next showcase. We're gonna go ahead and add some more.
Cody.
Yeah, what's up?
I think this is Tony's part.
Well, Tony's not here right now, right?
I'm here. My laptop just isn't working, so I'm on a different PC.
Oh, okay. Go right ahead.
Well,
so our plan to work until the next showcase is we're going to add in more models into the cave system. Our 3 of our meshes have way too many vertices, so we're going to optimize some of those. We're going to add a decorative details to the cave. We're going to add more decorative details to the cave to kind of finalize it. We're going to start working on the path leading out of the cave and into a forest, and also start working on the forest region of the map. lastly, we're gonna change the landscape texture to fit with the next two areas that we're gonna be working on.
All right. And is this visible to everybody?
Yeah, looks good.
All right. So as you can see here with the skate pod, you can kind of see the particle systems better, I think, than in the screenshots. So like you can see the fire effect a little bit better. We also added some lights around the particle effects that kind of flicker on and off. I don't know if Zoom actually has a high enough frame rate for that to be noticeable, but it's happening. You just have to trust me. I edited the material of the escape pod a little bit so that I cranked up the metallic and reflections a bit on it so that it looks more like metal than it did before. With the escape pod, Landon spruced up the particle effects like we mentioned, and then also for the lamp on the escape pod, I put an emissive material on that, which kind of fades in and out like on a sine wave. If you like kind of pay attention to the floor, you can kind of see the like noise that Cody was adding on it, and you can also see that the material has been changed and it's not just ugly like it was before. This is some of the clusters of plants that we were adding in before, that we were showing off before. And we move into the main room, and we have this central pillar that has a whole lot of these mushrooms growing on it. And we have some of these over here, like growing in small clusters on the sides of the cave around where the lights are. And then if we take a step outside the front entrance, you can see that the front entrance looks a lot better blended into the landscape than it did before. Before you could just like see all of the rocks sitting everywhere, like just in a frame pretty much around the cave. And now it kind of looks like the entrance to like the side of a mountain or whatever. And that is,
How did you guys achieve that?
I believe that was Landon that did
Yeah.
that. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So what I did was I took the landscape map. There's currently two landscapes technically. There's the default one, which is the entire map, and then I made a small copy of it and deleted most of it and only used it for like the cave flooring. And so for the default map, I simply sculpted the map on top of the cave. It's like I just I sculpted like a mountain on top of it. And what I did was I edited the material a little bit, and that allowed me to remove visibility for a small section. That's what I did for the cave entrance. I just simply removed the visibility for that landscape. And that's basically all I did.
Cool, thanks.
Were there any questions, or Cody, Landon, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
How did you paint the noise on the floor? So if you go ahead and go to modes in the top, Eric, you can click on that. You can click on landscape. And then you can go to noise. Yeah. And you see right there. So that lets you just go ahead and then you have to select landscape 5 to actually change the one you want. You just select the like landscape that you want to edit. You can set different things about it, the strength, like how much it varies, the distance between like bits of noise. If you set it really low, you can make it like spikes. If you set it really high, it gets really smooth. It's just a lot of stuff you can do with the terrain sculpting, really. You want to make it lower, you can use erosion, stuff like that. Yeah, no problem. It's not too hard to get used to.
Do we have any other questions for this group? Okay, thank you guys. Next up is Nature's End. Who's screen sharing for that? Kyle? Okay, Kyle, we can see your display. We can't hear you. We can just hear this. Okay, now maybe we can hear you. Okay.
I'll be starting us off. We're the Nature's End group. Our game is more centered towards a nature exploratory game. The members of our group is me, Andrew Hall, and Kyle Roussel. Kyle, can you go next slide? Some of the things that we learned this week is we can't do a procedural landscape that we originally planned because we looked at some of the tools that are required in the marketplace and they're a bit on the expensive side. And if we were to do it from scratch, it would be kind of beyond the scope of the project. That's like it would take up all of our time essentially. We also learned more about multi-layered textures and Andrew messed around with that and came up with some really cool ideas. Kyle also looked at some walking blueprints and some animation blend space to include in our game. But he also looked at it to implement it with a fox animation animal. And yeah, that's some of the main aspects of the things we learned this week. I'm now going to pass it off to Andrew to give more about his landscapes.
So over the last week, I played with the landscape generation, and I was watching a lot of tutorials online, and come to find out that all of them used a $30 procedural generation package that's on the marketplace. So I did kind of waste a lot of time trying to learn that before I realized it was so expensive. So then I've been playing with finding a couple of different styles of landscape that we can make. And I came up with 2 different texture packs as kind of an experiment. And this first one is a 3-layered texture. And it basically allows you to paint 3 different textures, grass, dirt, and rock onto the surfaces. And there's no conditional formatting on these. It's just you get to choose where things are. And if we go into the next one, I learned about how to do contextual textures. And this is a pretty simple texture, but it's just a proof of concept. And it checks the slope to paint dirt on the higher slopes. And then above a certain height, it paints white so that you can get kind of this snow-covered peak mountain look to it. And then the default is just grass. I have plans to combine these 2 as well as having a lot more other textures in the various contexts so that we can have like different maybe rocky slopes above the Y value that you set, and different textures on the ground. It was more of just getting a proof of concept up for contextual texturing of the landscape. And then I have played around with a couple of different mountain styles and generating height maps manually. But we haven't settled on one specific look that we're really going for yet. So that'll be something that I'm going to work on in the next week.
Yeah, so what we're going to be starting to do now is making the landscapes by hand, start building some actual buildings that can be in the domain, getting to work with more like organisms like animals and plants. And I think I kind of decided on a view, but I'm going to share that with everyone else later on, like a group meeting, at least first person, third person wise. And then we're going to start looking into how to make the actual portals between the different areas and probably experimenting with Python to get a height map. And I'm going to pull up a little demo of what I have with at least the fox. It's moving around. That gave me a lot of headaches earlier on, so I guess that.
It's still on the presentation.
God damn it. Okay. I'm also sorry I curse a lot. Yeah. Yeah. He's moving around. But it doesn't really interact with the human yet, so kind of try to get it to run away from a person, start walking instead of running everywhere. But yeah. That's at least what I got for a demo. Any questions? Show off where you set material on a landscape based on height.
Yeah, so I can show that. All right. Are you guys able to see this?
Yeah.
Let's see, where was this? This was in P2, save. Just save it. Okay, so here we go. So basically what I did for this was I made a texture for the ground that uses the height of the map, and it blends above a certain Y value. So you can see here it starts to fade in to white, and it's just a marble texture for now because I haven't found a snow texture that I like really well, but it's white. And if we go into my materials, basically I use a height linear interpolator. Sorry, I cannot speak. And that basically fades between the ground texture and the snow texture based on the world position in the Y direction. And currently I have it set to 2000, and that's kind of the height limit. I also used linear interpolation based on the alignment to get the slope detection. And you can set that with these values here. But it just chooses between the correct textures for whether it's highly sloped, flat, or above a certain Y value. Were there any other questions about that?
Okay, do we have any other questions for Nature's End, guys? Going once, going twice, going 3 times gone. Okay, last but not least on the roster for today is the We and Ed team. Who's going to be sharing on that one?
That will be me. 1 second.
Okay. Okay, Jason, we
Can you see
your
this all right?
screen. Yep.
All right, awesome. So hello everyone, we are the We and Ed 3090 Ti group, and I am Jason. We also have Brian, Noah, and Ross. And just as a quick recap for what our project's about, our project is a puzzle-based escape room where we will have currently 5 different rooms that you must escape from by solving some kind of puzzle or riddle given by clues from objects that are in the room. And I'll go ahead and pass it off to Noah to talk about our room 1 progress.
Hey guys, so I'm gonna go over room 1 progress. So last week, this is what we looked at. All right, this is what our project looked like. As you can see, we just had some really basic kind of placeholders for the desk and the chairs and the plant on the side. And then if you'll switch to the next slide, we'll go to what we have currently. So as you can see, we've updated a lot of the models. The textures aren't quite there yet. That's why everything's kind of this weird orange color for the walls, and the desk is still just plain white. But that's something that we'll be working on in the future. And the lighting is also a little bit off, but we'll talk about that in a bit. We can go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll pass it off.
So we started planning out kind of what we want our second room to look like and what it's going to be like. We're going to basically have it's going to be a lot bigger of a room. The first room is a small office type thing. So when you walk into the next room, it's more of like a museum feel, and there's going to be a lot of different objects that have placards in front of them. We were still deciding if we want to have like some interaction with like solving the puzzle and objects appearing. So like, for example, there might be like a clue on a placard that you would solve, and then the object would appear, and then maybe we could make it so when you have all of the objects, the door opens, something like that maybe. We're still deciding exactly what we want to do. So we're not fully sure yet, but that's something we're going to have done by like Monday, most likely, how we want the room to be functioning, and we're going to be actually modeling it out. Going to the next slide. We still have like a rough plan for what we want to do for room 3. This one's going to be a room filled with a lot of antique mirrors and clocks. There'll be like grandfather clocks, like the big oval mirrors. They're antiques. They're going to be all around the room. And inside one of the mirrors, we're going to have like a clock that's going to be stuck on a time. All the other clocks are going to be moving with their time, so you'll like be able to notice like, hey, that might look a little bit weird. And also the clock that's in the mirror won't actually be in the room. So like it'll be reflecting something that's not there. We've already found something, Noah found something that's for making invisible objects have reflections. So that's kind of what we're looking at doing for that. And then you're gonna enter like the time code to open the door to the next room. I'm gonna hand it off to Ross, who's going to talk about what we're doing in the next few weeks.
All right, so our plans for the next week are we just wanted to get some texturing for room 1 done. Whenever you can see in the demo after this, some of the objects and stuff look rather untextured, and it makes the room look kind of bland. So we're gonna try and get some textures done so that the room looks a lot better. And then, as we said earlier, and you'll see in the demo, there are some weird lighting bugs that we have going on, so we're gonna try and fix those. And then we also do want to have rooms 2 and 3 at least modeled, at least a basic amount to where we have room 1 right now, because then we can start working on functionality for our midterm. Speaking of the midterm, we want to have the logic and functionality for both the rooms 1 and 2 completely done so that they are completely interactive and do open up all the doors and lead into the different rooms. And then we also are looking to have rooms 1 through 3 completely polished. And then we want to do some early prototyping on rooms 4 and 5. Right now, we basically just have some bare bones ideas of what we want and a few little concepts, but we want to have those set in stone and maybe some like prototype models and whatnot done for those. And now I'll hand it off to the demo.
All right, so for our demo, I'll just go ahead and start off by having the scene unlit. So basically what we have right now is what we showed in the screenshots for the room update. As you can see, we've added a couple more objects around the room, and also something to note, the walls that we have right now are, we can see through them from the outside, but you won't, these locations that you can see through them, you won't be able to reach in the game. So it's just so we can actually see through while we're actually building it. But if you're inside, this is more or less what it looks like without the lighting. Something to note, just a little bit of credit for this. Brian's made many of these models in Maya. It's things like this book, the pen right here, and most of the walls and floor, as well as the sir and the door. Those were all modeled by him. And I'll go ahead and switch it back over to the lit. And as you can see, we have problems with the lighting. Now, from what I can tell, it's because the lighting maps are overlapping with most of the objects. We can see some of the objects here, like this wall painting, the lamp, and the chair, as well as the book, actually have their lighting correct, because inside the room, everything should be completely dark the way I have it set up. So if I go ahead and bring a light source down, you can see the objects actually light up properly with the light source in front of them. Now, I haven't done that much research into fixing the lighting, and basically I'm going to have to go through and look at the light maps and probably re-import some of the assets. But that is part of our plans for the next week. And other than that, additional plans for the next week, all of these buttons will be interactable. And the goal for this puzzle will be all these squares, these like black and white tiles on the floor that have furniture objects placed on them, including like the potted plants. These are the squares that correspond to the SIR that you will have to push. And once all the correct ones are pushed without any incorrect ones being pushed, the door will open to the next room, which is the logic that we plan on working on implementing for the next week. And now I see there's a couple of questions, I think. Let me open up chat. Have you tried removing the directional light and just using point lights? Makes no difference. It is a problem with the light maps themselves. I'm not sure exactly what I'm not sure exactly where they're overlapping. I have to go and look at that myself. And then probably, I think there's a way that we can fix that just with the mesh editor, but I have to look into that because the lighting is a little bit of what I've been working on. Like I said, some of the objects actually light correctly, which I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why they light correctly because we didn't import them any different way, but it may just have to do with where the actual UV, what's it called? It may have to deal with how the UVs are actually set for the objects themselves. But overall, this is most of what our progress on the room one looks like. As was mentioned, things like the wall, the floor, the ceiling, and the desk all need to be textured for the next week. And then after that, I think our room one is pretty much what we want it to be.
I have a question. You guys keep referring to UV. That means ultraviolet to me, but I doubt that's what that means. What does UV stand for? Does anybody know?
Isn't UV just ultraviolet?
Honestly, no.
Well, I doubt it stands for ultraviolet light.
The letters
So-
U and V denote the axes of the 2D texture, is what Wikipedia says.
Ah, okay. But I hear people whenever they're talking about Unreal and they're talking about lighting and they're talking about importing things, the comments you guys are making about lighting maps causing problems, I hear that a lot when I hear people talking about this. But anyway, I was just curious what UV stood for. Do we have any other questions for the We and Ed team? Your office does look good there. Even with the problems with the lighting, it still looks quite good. Okay, no other questions? All right, thank you. So, good progress this time. You guys are starting to make some solid progress. That's good to see. I was a little worried last week. I'm less worried this week, so that's good. I did want to take a few minutes and just talk about what we have upcoming here. So here's our schedule today. It's up there at the top with our group project updates. There will be no group update this upcoming Friday. So this next week, you guys are not going to have an update. And the reason for that is on Wednesday and Friday of the following week, those are your project midterm presentations. And I expect, you know, every team to do a pretty solid demo. I mean, no more, you know, default Unreal guy walking through a scene type thing. We want to see, you know, things should be shaping up where there's a pretty good idea of what you're doing. Obviously, it's not going to be finished. You're still going to have, you know, another month or so to work on it. But it should be, you know, it should be fairly far along. And some of the teams, you know, look like you guys are getting there. Others, you know, everybody made a lot of improvement over the last week, but some teams are still clearly far behind some other teams. So you guys need to think about that. Anyway, we're not going to meet on Monday because that's Martin Luther King Day. So there will be 2 lectures next week. They'll be on Wednesday and Friday. And I plan to officially give out the programming assignment on Wednesday. Of course, we've already covered hidden surface removal and backface culling. Guess what? Backface culling is one part of what you're going to do on the next assignment. So if you want to do a get ahead, you know, over the extended weekend, you could always implement backface culling. It's not hard. It's you know, it's one routine that uses the formulas that I covered. That you know, you just before you draw a polygon in polygon draw, you say, oh, if it's visible or if it's not visible, let me quit. And if it is visible, let me go ahead and do my work. So it's I would go ahead and get that taken care of because you can lock that in. It's the easiest part of assignment 3. Probably on Wednesday, I don't know. I may carve out time to go over my implementation of assignment 2. We're at a point where, and it was interesting. I mean, you know, we did code walkthroughs all day. I did code walkthrough all days yesterday, so I looked at, you know, 20 student programs, and some of you kind of took a low energy approach where you changed as little of what I had in the first framework as possible. I can understand that, but it's, you know, it's there's a lot of stuff that's hard coded with a lot of global variables, and you know, the more you just let those global variables proliferate, you know, then the, you know, the more code you just copying and pasting and modifying slightly, and then when you want to make a change, you know, like let's say you want to add another object, well then you find out that you've been using, you know, global object names throughout your code, and it starts getting more and more difficult. You know, my version of the code is not object oriented. There was really one student who really went and converted things into a true object oriented form, 1 or 2. But I'm not taking the time to do that, but I am trying to use what we would call back in the day structured programming. I am trying to make everything modular so that, for example, if I define another object, I can just stick it in my list of objects, and I don't have to worry about my resets. I don't have to worry about, you know, twiddling with my little left and right arrows, select objects and stuff like that. So I may take some time to go over it, so that you guys can see that there are, because on a few programs it's getting ridiculous because they're so long and everything's unwound, and that's we need to try to think about how we can make code a little bit more generalized. Anyway, enough talking about that. So that's next week. We'll get assignment 3. I'll probably go walk through my code, spend a little while going over how I did assignment 2, and then we'll do polygon filling and Z buffering. And that looks good. Are there any questions about the schedule? Any questions about the schedule coming up? Okay. Well, you guys have a good weekend, and I'll see you on Wednesday then. Okay, Matt, guys, take care. I'll stick around if anybody has any questions. Take care. Bye-bye.